My name is Evelyn Reed. I'm 52 years old, and I'm a senior account manager, or at least, I was until 20 minutes ago. My hand still tingles from where it rested on the cold, polished mahogany of Richard Thorne's desk, the very desk his father used to tap with a friendly, reassuring rhythm. Richard, however, kept his hands clasped, knuckles white, as he delivered the news. "Evelyn," he'd said, his voice flat, "we're going in a new direction. Your services are no longer required." 26 years. A lifetime, practically. I felt a hot flush creep up my neck, but I simply nodded, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. He thought he was cutting me off at the knees, severing my professional life. What he didn't realize, what he couldn't realize in his self-importance, was that he'd just handed me the key to a door he'd spent years trying to lock away from me. And through that door was his biggest client, waiting. To understand the weight of that moment, you need to know Thorne Associates, and you need to know Richard. I started at the company straight out of college, a wide-eyed 26-year-old eager to learn. Richard's father, Arthur Thorne, was a visionary. He built the agency on relationships, on trust, on the simple idea that if you treated your clients like partners, they'd stay. I took that philosophy to heart. I spent decades cultivating those connections, watching them grow from tentative handshakes into solid, multi-million-dollar contracts. My desk, for years, held a well-worn leather-bound ledger. It wasn't just a record book, it was a testament to every client I'd brought in, every project I'd nurtured. Richard, when he took over after his father's retirement 5 years ago, used to eye it with a dismissive smirk. "Old school, Evelyn," he'd say, "we have digital systems now." He was right, of course, but that ledger represented something deeper, the human touch, the history. Richard was different from his father. He was all about the bottom line, about efficiency reports and quarterly projections. He saw clients as revenue streams, not relationships. He'd inherited a thriving business, but he seemed determined to streamline it into something unrecognizable, often at the expense of the very clients who built it. My most cherished client, and arguably Thorne Associates' most lucrative, was Horizon Innovations. I'd brought them in myself almost 15 years ago. They were a small tech startup then, with a brilliant product but no idea how to market it. I'd helped them craft their brand, launch their campaigns, and watched them grow into a national leader. Marcus Albright, their CEO, and I had a rapport that went beyond typical client agency dynamics. We understood each other, shared a vision for their growth. Horizon Innovations represented nearly 30% of Thorne Associates' annual revenue. It was the crown jewel, and I was its keeper. The first sign of trouble began subtly, about 2 years ago. Richard started pushing for budget cuts on Horizon's projects. He'd insist on using cheaper vendors for printing or less experienced junior designers for their ad creatives. I'd argue, presenting data on the potential impact on quality and, more importantly, on Horizon's brand image. "Evelyn, we need to optimize," he'd declare, waving his hand dismissively. I'd often have to work late, personally overseeing the junior staff or finding ways to mitigate the damage, often absorbing costs myself or finding creative workarounds to keep Horizon happy. Marcus, perceptive as ever, started asking pointed questions about the new direction of the agency. I'd always deflected, assuring him that I was still personally overseeing everything. Then, Richard began to bypass me. Horizon had a major product launch 6 months ago, a critical campaign. Historically, I would lead all communications with Marcus and his team, presenting strategies and getting approvals. But Richard started scheduling meetings directly with Marcus, often without my knowledge, presenting his own ideas that sometimes contradicted what we had already discussed. I'd walk into my office to find an email chain I wasn't on, discussing details I should have been managing. It felt like a deliberate attempt to cut me out of the loop, to diminish my role in Marcus's eyes. I confronted Richard about it, calmly, professionally. He just shrugged. "Marcus is the CEO, Evelyn. He wants to talk to the owner. It's a power move, you understand. Good for the optics." But I knew it wasn't about optics for Marcus, it was about trust, and Richard was eroding it. The situation escalated dramatically 3 months ago with the botched rollout of Horizon's new app. Richard had unilaterally decided to switch the digital marketing platform at the last minute, overriding my recommendation for a proven, albeit slightly more expensive, solution. His chosen platform, a cheaper and proven option, had a critical bug that caused their ad campaign to display incorrectly for nearly a week. The launch was a mess. Horizon lost significant potential revenue and suffered a public relations nightmare. I spent days putting out fires, apologizing to Marcus, and working with their internal teams to salvage what we could. I compiled a detailed report, outlining the specific decisions Richard had made, the cost savings he'd projected, and the actual financial and reputational damage incurred. I presented it to him, expecting, at the very least, an acknowledgement. Richard barely glanced at the stapled pages. "Evelyn," he said, pushing the report back across his desk, "you're too emotional about these things. We learn and we move on. You're stuck in the past, still clinging to those old ways. This is a new era of efficiency, not hand-holding." He then accused me, point blank, of being too close to Horizon, implying my loyalty was to them, not to Thorne Associates. The accusation stung, but it also clarified something for me. He wasn't just dismissive, he saw my deep client relationships as a liability, not an asset. He wanted to own those relationships himself, to take credit for the years of work I'd put in. It was then I understood. Richard wasn't just trying to optimize the company, he was systematically trying to push me out. My long tenure, my institutional knowledge, and especially my unshakable bond with Horizon Innovations, were a threat to his absolute control. He wanted to claim Horizon as his client, to be the sole point of contact, to take all the credit and all the profits. He knew I wouldn't compromise on quality or integrity, so he had to remove me. I started to prepare. Quietly, meticulously, just as I'd always managed my accounts. I began saving every relevant email, every project brief, every performance review, all of which, until Richard's recent machinations, had been stellar. I reviewed my employment contract, specifically the non-compete and non-solicitation clauses. I wasn't naive, I knew I couldn't just walk out and steal clients. But I also knew my rights. The non-solicitation clause prevented me from actively pursuing Thorne and Associates clients for a period, but it said nothing about clients approaching me. More importantly, I had brought Horizon in. It wasn't a client Richard had inherited, it was a client I had cultivated. A few weeks before my eventual firing, Marcus Albright called me. He'd heard rumors through the industry grapevine about changes at Thorne and Associates. He was concerned about Horizon's upcoming campaigns, especially after the app launch debacle. I met him for lunch, off the clock, at a quiet cafe downtown. I didn't badmouth Richard directly, but I spoke honestly about the shift in management philosophy, the increasing focus on short-term gains over long-term client value, and my personal frustration with the direction the agency was taking. Marcus listened intently, his expression growing more troubled with each word. "Evelyn," he said, leaning forward, "your dedication to Horizon has been paramount. If things were to change for you, what would you do?" I told him I was exploring options, perhaps even starting my own boutique consultancy. I saw a flicker of an idea in his eyes, but neither of us pursued it further. Not yet. Then came the call to Richard's office. The conversation was brief, devoid of any sentiment. He cited restructuring and a shift in departmental focus. Not once did he mention my 26 years of service, the countless hours, the clients I'd brought in, the revenue I'd generated. He just handed me a severance package offer and told me HR would handle the paperwork. I felt a surge of cold fury, but I kept my voice even. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Not really." I understood his motive, but not his utter lack of gratitude. I walked back to my office, my head held high, and began packing. I carefully placed my old leather-bound client ledger into my box of personal effects. It felt heavy in my hands, a silent witness to everything. I was barely out of the building, the late afternoon sun already casting long shadows on the sidewalk, when my phone rang. It was Marcus Albright. "Evelyn," he said, his voice urgent, "I just heard. Is it true? Are you really out?" I confirmed it, feeling a strange mix of relief and trepidation. "This is unacceptable," he continued. "Thorne Associates has been slipping for months, and now this? You are Horizon's connection to that agency. You are our account." He paused, then his voice dropped, becoming serious. "I meant what I said at lunch. If you're starting your own thing, Evelyn, I want to be your first client. No, more than that. I want to partner with you. Horizon needs your expertise, your dedication. We can't afford to lose you." That was it. The moment. The complete, undeniable reversal of fortune. Richard had fired me, thinking he was taking Horizon Innovations for himself. Instead, he'd pushed me directly into their arms. I took a deep breath. "Marcus," I said, "I think that's an excellent idea." Over the next few weeks, the details solidified. Horizon Innovations formally terminated its contract with Thorne Associates, citing irreconcilable differences in strategic vision. Richard, of course, went ballistic. My former colleagues told me he was pacing his office, red-faced, screaming about betrayal and legal action. His lawyers sent me a terse letter, threatening a lawsuit for breach of my non-compete. But my own lawyer, whom I'd consulted weeks prior, calmly drafted a reply. Horizon had approached me. I had not solicited them. My contract explicitly allowed me to pursue new opportunities, and Horizon, as an independent entity, was free to choose its own partners. The case was dead on arrival. Richard had no grounds. I incorporated my own consulting firm, Reed Solutions, a name chosen for its simplicity and directness. Marcus Albright and Horizon Innovations became my anchor client, providing not just substantial revenue but also a powerful endorsement that quickly attracted other businesses. I set up a small, bright office, a space that felt truly mine. The work was demanding, but it was fulfilling in a way it hadn't been for years. I was building something new, something based on the values Arthur Thorne had instilled, values Richard had discarded. One quiet evening, after a long day of calls and strategy sessions, I found myself looking at my old leather-bound ledger. It sat on my new desk, no longer a relic of a bygone era, but a symbol of continuity, of the deep, human connections that truly drive business. It was still well-worn, still filled with my meticulous notes, but now it held a new meaning. It wasn't just a record of the past, it was the foundation of my future. Richard had tried to erase me, to dismiss my 26 years of loyalty and hard work. Instead, he'd inadvertently set me free, allowing me to build something far stronger, far more aligned with who I truly was. The silence in my new office was profound, a quiet testament to a journey that had come full circle.